Meghan Markle's hidden history is fracturing her public image once again, following explosive new declarations from her former spouse. A media firestorm of historic proportions has engulfed the British royal palace after Trevor Engelson broke years of silence, dropping a massive bombshell that unmasked a dark, hidden chapter from the early life of his ex-wife, Meghan Markle. This direct, highly damaging exposure immediately pushed the Duke and Duchess of Sussex into a high-stakes standoff with King Charles III, who immediately initiated a merciless purge of the couple. As the pressure intensified, Trevor escalated the stakes by leaking damning documentation, showcasing an old photo of a young girl alongside highly sensitive paperwork detailing the true identities of her parents. The entire world watched in absolute shock due to the child's uncanny physical resemblance to Meghan. Caught in a wave of public condemnation, a panicked Meghan Markle scrambled to bury the evidence, manipulating media narratives in a desperate bid to preserve her royal status while pushing her marriage to Prince Harry toward complete collapse. How will King Charles react now that these photographs have entered the public domain? What dark secrets will be dragged into the light during this brutal palace purge? And what will become of Meghan's future as a tidal wave of global outrage threatens to drown her? Stay tuned until the very end to witness the shocking chain of events and the humiliating downfall of a calculated media empire. The crisis began when Trevor Engelson unexpectedly ended his long-standing silence during a private media interview. Throughout the discussion, he openly voiced profound regret regarding his past marriage to Meghan. Trevor confessed that he had been burdened by overwhelming guilt for years, feeling as though he was keeping a dark, deeply sinister secret from the world. As the man who stood by Meghan when she was just an unestablished actress, desperately fighting for a break in Hollywood, Trevor knew every hidden detail of her past. Because of this, he chose to expose a reality that sent shockwaves through the public. In January 2014, he personally uncovered evidence that Meghan Markle had given birth to a child from a previous relationship, and that child was absolutely not his biological daughter. This devastating revelation instantly triggered a massive media storm, leaving audiences completely paralyzed with shock. Endless questions flooded the internet, with public focus shifting directly onto her current marriage inside the British royal family. People began questioning whether Prince Harry had ever known that his wife had allegedly been involved with multiple partners during their early timeline. Simultaneously, intense controversy erupted regarding how the palace would handle a personal scandal of such catastrophic proportions. The situation was no longer a simple Hollywood gossip column. It had rapidly transformed into a full-blown institutional crisis, directly threatening the dignity and purity of the historic royal bloodline. The moment these highly toxic rumors reached the palace gates, the atmosphere inside became more volatile than ever before. King Charles III immediately called an emergency summit with senior royals to manage the disaster. The core objective of this covert meeting was to draft a definitive blueprint to strip Meghan Markle of her royal titles should the situation reach a point of no return. However, a serious breach occurred within the palace's historic walls. The entire top-secret discussion from this emergency meeting was reportedly overheard by a staff member. That individual then covertly leaked the highly sensitive strategy to the press, causing an already chaotic situation to spin entirely out of the royal family's control. What will Meghan Markle do when she discovers that the king's private meeting has been leaked to the press? And what PR strategies will she deploy to defend her crown? Terrified by the sudden reality of losing her prestigious royal title after the leaked palace meeting went public, Meghan could not simply sit back and accept defeat. She recognized that without immediate action, the global fame and status she had spent years constructing would completely vanish. Driven by intense panic, Meghan rushed to prominent media outlets to issue a calculated statement designed to shift public opinion. Appearing highly emotional before the cameras, she directly addressed the child Trevor Engelson had brought to light. She fiercely stated, "I am forced to step forward because these cruel rumors have crossed every line of decency and are maliciously distorting the truth. The child Trevor spoke of is not a dark secret. The reality is that child is my own flesh and blood, the result of the love between Harry and myself. Yes, I am ready to admit the truth. We were secretly seeing each other during that exact window. We met in private, loved each other away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi, and I became pregnant of his child during that very period. This is an intimate matter between us, not evidence of multiple partners, as critics are desperately fabricating to tear me down." By confessing to a secret affair and a child with Prince Harry while still legally tied to her ex-husband, Meghan hoped to use a fairy tale romance narrative to legitimize the child while calming the palace's anger. However, this strategic move backfired entirely. The second Meghan's statement hit the internet, global online communities mobilized and immediately exposed what they labeled a clumsy fabrication. Internet sleuths launched precise timeline investigations and data comparisons. Thousands of comments surfaced challenging her story, noting that if the child were truly Meghan and Harry's firstborn around January 2014, as Trevor's leak implied, that child would already have celebrated her 12th birthday by now. This massive contradiction in her timeline turned her emotional defense into a public mockery. Cornered by factual arguments from internet commentators that she could not easily disprove, Meghan Markle once again scrambled to protect herself. She stepped forward with a secondary explanation, utilizing a deeply painful justification to bridge the timeline gap she had created. Holding back tears, Meghan told reporters, "People are intentionally dissecting dates without understanding the trauma a grieving mother has faced. It is true that if that child had survived, they would be 12 years old today. But the reality is that while I became pregnant during that time, due to a tragic medical complication, I suffered a devastating miscarriage. My and Harry's first precious baby never got the chance to see the world. That is why no 12-year-old child exists today. Please stop weaponizing the pain of my loss to fuel these disgusting attacks against me." However, Meghan's tearful presentation and miscarriage defense failed to satisfy those tracking the facts. Refusing to allow Meghan any room to distort reality, manipulate the public, or bury her history, Trevor Engelson immediately launched a fierce counteroffensive. He flatly denied the miscarriage narrative and any biological connection between the child and Prince Harry. Trevor released a direct public statement that dismantled his ex-wife's entire defense. "Stop dragging Prince Harry and a manufactured miscarriage story into this mess to manipulate the public, Meghan. That child has absolutely zero connection to Harry, and there was never any miscarriage like the one you just described to the media." Immediately following that aggressive denial, Trevor dealt a secondary, devastating blow, exposing an entirely hidden era of Meghan Markle's life to the public eye. He brought forward a sensational claim that the child was actually the product of a secret marriage between Meghan and a man named Joe Giuliano. According to Trevor, this union had quietly occurred in Las Vegas during the late 1990s, while Meghan was still a university student. This second wave of exposure not only crushed Meghan's attempts to fix her reputation, but also dragged a completely new figure from her past into the global spotlight, escalating the severity of the crisis to an unprecedented level, and once again leaving both Meghan and the British royal family in a state of deep shock. What definitive proof regarding Meghan's alleged child with Joe Giuliano will be brought to light next? And how will Prince Harry respond when forced to face this harsh reality? Determined to push global outrage to its absolute limit, Trevor decided he would no longer protect any aspect of his former wife's hidden history. He openly detailed to the press exactly how he uncovered this explosive secret. The director's voice was sharp with bitterness as he remembered the years he spent living in a web of deception. Recounting the exact moment, he stated, "I am not making these claims without proof. I personally uncovered a photograph of a young girl named Noelle hidden deep inside the bedroom my wife and I shared. What was even more shocking was that on the back of the photograph were handwritten notes containing clear, detailed names of her parents, along with the baby's exact date of birth. As my suspicions mounted, I quietly ran a private investigation to uncover the unvarnished truth. What I uncovered left me completely paralyzed. Those records and files verified that the child was Meghan's biological daughter with a man named Joe Giuliano. This explosive discovery, carrying catastrophic implications, quickly hit the Sussex home itself, entirely shattering whatever trust remained between the couple. Faced with what appeared to be undeniable evidence from Trevor's testimony, the domestic warfare between the couple didn't stay confined behind closed bedroom doors. Outside their home, another massive storm was destroying the reputation of the monarchy. The British royal family found itself dragged directly into a swamp of relentless criticism from both the public and global commentators. Public opinion turned increasingly mocking and hostile, blasting the institution for poor judgment in allowing a woman with a complicated past and an alleged child outside of wedlock to marry into the palace and tarnish a centuries-old lineage. National prestige and the honor of generations of monarchs were being ridiculed on the world stage. Faced with a crisis severe enough to threaten the foundations of the crown, King Charles III could no longer show patience. The monarch immediately delivered a stern, chilling ultimatum directly to Prince Harry. The words of the king carried absolute sovereignty, leaving zero room for debate. "Harry, I am ordering you to resolve this scandal involving your wife immediately and permanently. The royal family will never protect these fabrications or stand in the filth your household has generated. If you cannot fix this disaster and deliver a clean resolution, I will officially sign an executive order stripping both you and your wife of every single royal title, honor, and privilege, without exception." Upon receiving this severe ultimatum from King Charles III, Harry became even more aggressive, intensifying the pressure on Meghan. Faced with constant questioning, sharp evidence, and a scenario from which there was no escape, Meghan Markle was left completely speechless, unable to produce a single piece of documentation to counter the accusations before Harry. Yet her refusal to surrender and her survival instinct drove her toward one final desperate gamble. Unable to justify herself to her husband or the palace, Meghan chose instead to initiate a new media counteroffensive via social media to shift the narrative. She published a lengthy statement directly accusing Trevor Engelson of fabricating the entire story regarding Noelle and Joe Giuliano to completely ruin her brand and tarnish her name. Meghan viciously attacked her ex-husband publicly, painting him as a selfish, vindictive individual who was intentionally digging up old history and inventing impossible stories out of deep resentment after she divorced him to achieve a successful Hollywood career. In the face of Meghan's aggressive pushback and public insults on social media, what undeniable evidence will Trevor Engelson drop next to destroy her performance once and for all? Meghan's double standards and public insults on social media hit a nerve, sending Trevor Engelson into an absolute rage. Outraged by her attempt to rewrite history and frame him as a vindictive, pathetic man, Trevor decided he would no longer show a single shred of mercy out of respect for their past. To completely obliterate what he viewed as a shameless PR campaign, he dropped his most devastating asset yet, publicly uploading the photograph of the child named Noelle onto the internet before millions of viewers. Although Trevor intentionally blurred the child's face in the image to respect her privacy under legal guidelines, the handwritten text beneath the photo containing explicit data about the parents, the child's birth date, and the location remained fully visible and undeniably clear. The arrival of this physical proof triggered an unprecedented digital earthquake. Online communities worldwide immediately went to work using advanced image enhancement tools, zoom technology, and side-by-side matrices to break down the image. After hours of intense analysis, digital detectives universally claimed that despite the blurred face, the child's bone structure, mouth outline, and distinctive facial indicators shared an undeniable resemblance to a young Meghan Markle. Before the public eye, every single denial Meghan had manufactured crumbled to dust. As the drama spun deeper out of control, with no remaining avenue for defense, a suffocating atmosphere descended on the Sussex home. Realizing that both he and his wife had been backed into a corner, Harry fell into a state of panic, deep humiliation, and complete despair. In his darkest hour, he recognized that his reputation in power circles like Silicon Valley and Hollywood had been utterly ruined, and the sole remaining way to salvage a shred of dignity was to beg for forgiveness from his family. Trembling, Harry reportedly picked up his phone and desperately dialed King Charles III directly. Speaking with a voice choked with raw emotion and humility, Harry offered a painful compromise to his father. He stated he would accept the total removal of all royal titles from both himself and his wife. He would surrender every privilege and high-profile status on one condition, that he be allowed to divorce Meghan and return to the United Kingdom alone to rebuild his life from scratch. Yet the tearful begging of his younger son failed to move the heart of the man sitting on the throne. Confronted with a scandal that had brought massive disgrace upon the royal house, King Charles III remained freezing cold, firm and resolute. There would be no mercy, no open arms welcoming home a broken son as had happened in the past. In a deep voice commanding the absolute power of a reigning monarch, King Charles III reportedly delivered a brutal final answer. Harry, listen to me very carefully. It is far too late for apologies and regret. I cannot and will never consent to your return to Great Britain, whether alone or under any other scenario. My supreme obligation as king is to defend the integrity of our ancestors and the honor of a dynasty that has stood for centuries. You actively chose to abandon the royal family. You chose to stand beside a woman who deceived the global public. Now you must face the consequences of that choice alone. As for your titles, removing them is now just a matter of time and administrative paperwork. The British royal family will never accept a child belonging to another bloodline, a bloodline that does not belong to this house, to disrupt, stain, and threaten the succession of this dynasty. The royal door is now permanently shut to you. The king's blunt, unforgiving rejection hit Harry like a definitive sentence, cementing his fate. It did not stop with verbal statements. According to reports, the king immediately signed a highly restricted royal decree permanently banning Harry from returning, cutting off every potential avenue for the fallen prince to ever come home. At this stage, the stripping of the Sussex titles was no longer a backup plan, but an absolute certainty set to occur in the near future. The palace's resolve was laser-focused on cutting all remaining ties to Meghan Markle, ensuring that neither the existence of a child named Noelle nor any other hidden secret from her past would ever threaten the crown or the royal lineage. Harry lowered his phone in stunned silence, completely paralyzed by helplessness as he realized he had lost absolutely everything: no royal identity, no family backing, and no route home ever again. Now that every pillar of support from his husband to the institution has completely fractured, how will Meghan Markle survive the backlash of her remaining fans and the final hammer blow from global public opinion? Finally, after the photograph displaying the notorious handwritten notes went viral and the door back to the British royal family was permanently slammed in Harry's face, the media war surrounding Meghan Markle reached its final chapter. Confronted with a mountain of hard evidence and the palace's freezing, uncompromising stance, the landscape of social media and international news commentary fractured deeply. The energy surrounding the Sussex couple grew heavier and darker than ever before, signaling an absolute downfall that appeared impossible to fix. Amid this brutal storm of criticism, Meghan's core loyalists made one final, desperate effort to shield their icon. Fan accounts and select commentators closely connected to her PR team synchronized across social media platforms and news outlets to fix her image. They repeatedly pushed familiar talking points, strictly claiming that all of Trevor Engelson's claims, the narrative of a secret Las Vegas marriage to Joe Giuliano, and the alleged existence of a daughter named Noelle, were nothing more than toxic tabloid fabrications. They consistently launched articles designed to manipulate public perspective, arguing that this was a highly organized smear campaign fueled by jealousy intended to destroy the brand of a successful, powerful, independent woman. Her defenders desperately held on to the narrative that critics were intentionally digging up, manipulating, and exaggerating ancient history to suppress the career and global reach that Meghan had built. However, all of those defenses and calculated campaigns proved completely useless against a harsh reality. The weak resistance of a minor fan base could not halt the surging anger of international public opinion. As the striking visual similarities in the child's facial traits were broken down and the massive